Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Waymakers, the podcast that talks about women who are forging their own way in this world. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Waymakers. Today, I want to talk about workplace gifts. This is an interesting one because I've worked in places where we've had like different approaches, and I guess it depends on the size of your business as to whether or not or how much of an involvement co-workers have in things like this. But when I talk about workplace functions and gifts, etc., I'm talking about the whip round that sometimes is expected when it's someone's birthday or they're having a baby, or moving, or leaving. And I think, especially in the smaller places, there's usually an envelope that gets passed around, and someone will put, hopefully not change, someone will put cash in and gets passed around, and then it's someone's job to then go out and buy a gift with that money. I will say this, my general view on something like this is that I believe it's like the business responsibility to, if they're going to provide a gift, to actually pay for that gift. I don't think it's fair to expect other co-workers to contribute to it. I guess if they really, really wanted, they could buy them a gift. It's difficult because you don't know. Some teams are really, really close and therefore they'll do their own thing. And but I think in the interest of fairness, I think actually businesses should just say, you know, we've got a flat amount that we contribute, or a gift that they give to people when they leave, or a gift for a new baby, etc. But I was reading this thread, I guess, where a woman was actually complaining. I mean, it was a really weird scenario. Basically, there were two women in their company that were pregnant, and they were hosting baby showers for them. But it was weird because they were actually buying the decorations, or someone had bought the decorations, and they were being expected to contribute towards it. But it was strange because there was a second baby shower happening within the business for another co-worker who was pregnant. And I mean, basically, one team said that they couldn't really organising it because the rest of the team were men. I don't know why men don't seem to think they can buy balloons and a cake, but so they had actually requested or asked if another female co-worker could actually help organise it, and this co-worker then ended up spending out of her own pocket. I'm going to say this, and this might be controversial, but I don't think a work should be hosting a baby shower. I just think that's really strange. I would think a baby shower is a very personal thing. I can be on board with, oh, you're about to go and have this baby and go on maternity leave, and we'll take you out for lunch, or we'll have like a team thing. But a baby shower, I think that's a bit much, no? Please email me or comment with your views, because I think that's really odd. And a lot of pressure for other people to then have to buy gifts for people. I mean, cost of living crisis aside, what if I don't like you and now I feel obligated to buy you a gift or to pay money towards your gift? I don't know. I'd rather not have to deal with that in the first place. And actually, in the interest of fairness, I think it should just be decided by a higher power. So that's my view on that. But this situation had different layers to it, because there was an element of misogyny within that, where these guys were like, oh, we're useless men, we can't organise a banner that says you're having a baby. But this leads on to the question of, should we even be celebrating things like these in work? I think if someone leaves, I think obviously it's appropriate to like have a card and a gift to send away. But I do think there's it's like a bit of a funny or grey area where you're contributing to a gifted person that you're never actually going to get back because they're leaving. And if they're incredibly popular, then obviously they'll get a better gift, or a bigger gift, or a higher value gift card, or whatever it is that's been organised. And so I think there could also be an element of, and not envy, but, you know, making co-workers feel bad if they potentially might not get the same treatment, which is why I still think, yes, it should be arranged by the company, and there should be like a flat amount that is spent on any kind of event. But yeah, I also don't approve of co-workers having to pay for things like Christmas parties. If a business is arranging something, I think they should just do like pay for everything. But I think this is where you see the difference in like public and private sector, because I have a lot of friends who work in like teaching and like within the NHS, and they often have to pay for their own thing, which makes me feel sad. But I kind of get it if, you know, it would be paid out of public funds, and I don't know if that could be justified, but I don't know. I think it's, yeah, I think it's interesting, the stuff that you kind of get roped into. But if a company expects you to be there arranging something, I don't think that you should be expected to have to pay for it, is my general view. Not all businesses can afford to be that generous though. But when we're talking about purchasing presents for co-workers, I stand by my view that either you agree you're not actually going to give them anything, or the business agrees that they're going to buy a gift, and not have an expectation that co-workers have to contribute towards it. I still think it's strange. Obviously, if I like a co-worker, I would buy a gift, or within a smaller team, you would do that. But yeah, it's awkward. You know, when the envelope comes by and you're like, oh, I've got to find a £5 to stick in there. And actually, I don't know if I like this person enough to give up my lunch for that one gift. Yeah, that's my gripe off my chest for the moment. Moving on to something else that I keep hearing about, or keeps cropping up over the last couple of weeks, is something referred to as quiet quitting, which in a nutshell seems to be when someone is really frustrated at work and actually either on the brink of leaving or not able to leave, but very upset with work. So they make the decision to cut back on hours and generally putting in less effort and emotional investment in their current workplace. And whilst this might feel like a good thing to do in the moment, I think people need to actually take real stock of the situation and actually find a less passive-aggressive approach, because in my view, people are not going to notice, or they won't notice in the beginning. And so it might take some time for people to see that you're potentially more withdrawn, or that you're not actually putting in as much effort as you normally do, not working late, etc. And I think that's I think it's an interesting approach, but I think the only person you're hurting is you. If your output is relatively similar, you're just not going above and beyond, that might get noticed after some time. But in that time, you're going to be seething and angry, and you're obviously upset about something, which will have either triggered or caused you to then feel like this, or it would have been a period of time and a series of events that have led to you feeling this way. But if you are in a mode of you're like, don't actually care about your job, it must be quite upsetting for you, because you probably don't then feel very fulfilled, and it's probably a lot more effort to not put in as much energy and having to like force yourself to hold yourself back. So I would definitely stop and think to yourself, okay, am I in a position to just quit? Can you redirect your energies elsewhere, whether that be through job hunting, so you can find somewhere to go to, so you can then stick your fingers up at your business and say, look, somewhere else appreciates me more and is offering me what I want, or just, removing yourself from that, being able to remove yourself from that situation if it makes you that unhappy. But I actually think it's a bit silly I think there is a natural, I wouldn't say inclination, you do naturally start to withdraw when you are really unhappy at work, and that I think is a natural response. But I think when you're at a point where you're kind of purposely trying to do that, and that's your way of sticking two fingers up at your boss or the company that you work for, yeah, I think there's like a level of unhappiness that actually will then leak out to your co-workers. You might be really unhappy or short or sharp with co-workers, and that's not really their fault, potentially. If you've exhausted all avenues to be able to address any issues you have or issues you have with your progression within a business, then unfortunately I don't think it's quite quitting, I think it's just quitting. And yes, this is a really simplistic response. Not everyone is in a position to just hand in their notice, and it is quite difficult to job hunt and things like that. But is it worth your peace of mind, and is it worth the effort of going through all of this? If you feel like you haven't gotten anywhere after trying to resolve any issues, then there could be an alternative within the same company. Hopefully you can find a transfer that will make things less problematic, and you can then have a new start. But obviously if they're deep-rooted issues, then they'll probably follow you around if you're in the same business. So quite quitting, I think it's a bit silly as an approach, and I wouldn't recommend it. Although, as an add-on to something that was mentioned last week, I do think there is a benefit to not going in all guns blazing when you start a role, so that you have a lower sort of baseline, and then you're able to overexert yourself, when there's a requirement to do that, when there's a requirement to meet a certain deadline, or to, show out, to prove yourself for an opportunity within the environment that you're in. And therefore you allow yourself work-life balance, and you allow yourself the space to be able to do that, and not constantly working on 100, which will leave you burnt out. So yeah, I think I'm going to end on that note and say quite quitting is just quit. If you can, just quit. It's not worth it. There's nothing quite about it. At some point it's just going to fester within you, because you're just going to be irritated as you go along. But yeah, thanks for listening to this week. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at guy3@nbg-coaching.com. And please do also send in any dilemmas you may have.